Aye.
Director Fuentes.
Aye.
Director Hobson.
Aye.
Director Lewis.
Yes.
Director McAllis.
Aye.
Director Melvin.
Yes.
Director Payne.
Yes.
Director Ross.
Aye.
Director Totten.
Aye.
Director Triani.
Aye.
Chairman Dillard.
Yes.
15 ayes and 1 absent.
Thank you. The next item is our usual public comment segment of the meeting, and today we have no speakers scheduled.
Mr. Chairman.
So, yes.
I
Director
would
Hobson.
like to take one moment to make a public comment
Sure.
here. We just recently had a presentation out in McHenry County by the mobility manager, the new mobility manager out there, and it was fantastic. There was a lot of enthusiasm. I sit on a board out there where we have a lot of people who represent people with disabilities and elderly people. They were very enthusiastic about it. So in abstention, I'd like to thank Michael Vandekreek for doing such a great job and getting that kicked off. I think everybody will appreciate it in all their counties and locations.
Great. Thank you, Blake, and thanks for that report. And Michael, as we know, is awesome. So, item 5, and he is awesome, like most of his staff, if not all the staff. You're going to get me in trouble here, Director Hobson. All right. Speaking of awesome, our Executive Director, Leanne, it's your report.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for that. I will pass that on, and actually I'm going to touch on a little bit about some of those program enhancements and improvements in a few minutes. But I'll start where I always start. As of today, we are owed $287.4 million from the state of Illinois, and the cost of short-term borrowing for 2016 was just shy of $1 million. I'm being a little liberal with my just shy, but near enough. Okay, looking down to Springfield, literally. The chairman and Jeremy were down there yesterday. We left Jeremy down there, so he's still fighting the good fight.
Poor guy.
You did receive in the board conference room at your places a more in-depth briefing on the state and federal government affairs issues, so I won't get into too much detail, and we continue. You know, there's not a lot there's a lot of stuff happening, but not a lot of progress. So, you know, if things get really hot, we'll certainly be sending you also email updates and alerts to keep you apprised. But as we begin the 11th month of the fiscal 26-year fiscal budget impasse, a group of rank-and-file law members have been working to attempt to negotiate some kind of settlement or movement beyond the stalemate. Last week, they sent a bipartisan group of budgeteers sent a proposal to the governor and the legislative leaders. It supposedly included proposals for new revenues as well as budget cuts. It also proposed, we believe, to increase the state's income tax to the 4.85%, as well as expand the sales tax base and include some other services within that. So far, there's been no indications, and the media has been covering this pretty well, that there is really any leadership support for that proposal. So I guess at this point, we're not very optimistic, but there's still a lot of activity and actions happening down in Springfield. The first week of May, actually, a larger group of us were down there to partake in the Transportation for Illinois Coalition hosted their annual State House Lobby Days. So myself, Jeremy, Claire from the RTA side, as well as representatives from each of the service boards joined the broader coalition of industry leaders, labor, and other transportation agencies to actually continue sort of the conversation about, you know, even though we know it's state budget impasse first, don't forget about capital, and here are the needs on the capital. And this was not just a transit piece, but we absolutely were representing the transit interests in that conversation. The RTA, so we really focused on what our needs are as it relates to the broad-based infrastructure needs of the state. There has been some action in Springfield. There was a transportation constitutional amendment that recently passed out of the General Assembly. The initiative was started with the Illinois Chamber of Commerce that would amend the Illinois Constitution to create a transportation lockbox. So essentially what that measure would really do is those funds that are collected essentially the gas tax and a couple of other transportation-related fees would be actually locked down and only be able to use for transportation-related purposes. The legislative language, really the legislative intent language that sort of goes along with this is still being drafted. So while we know it includes the sort of potentially the gas tax, we know it does not include the sales tax on the gas tax. And there's really not a lot of specific language as to the details of what the specific uses of those funds would be. The intent at a highest level is to sort of fund the things that are now funded out of that fund. But the devil is always in the details, so we'll see how that progresses. And Jeremy is staying intimately engaged and involved in that conversation. I know that Jeremy and the chairman yesterday were doing a lot of work on sort of the split between highway and transit funding conversations should any efforts move on the capital front as well. Onto the federal side, budget and appropriations process has been the majority of focus of the Congress over the last couple of months in Washington. Neither the House nor the Senate have passed formal budget resolutions which would lock in place the funding levels needed to operate the federal government. That's probably largely because there's a federal election campaign pending, so it's taking people's minds off some of the order of business that has to occur. So it's likely that a continuing resolution will probably be put forward to get us past the October 1st deadline. Congress will, but they may pass the majority or many of the proposed spending bills in the lame duck session that would follow the election. So we're hopeful of that. So Jim Smith, that was here a couple of months ago, under his contract with his team, continued to work with us. I've spoken with a couple of you. There is a lot of activity sort of on the administrative side with the new transportation bill passing, a lot of rules, regulation, program guidance, new funding programs coming out, and they're helping us try to keep our head above water on some of that because, literally every other day or so there's something new coming out that we have to sort of react to or respond to or get engaged with. So they help keeping us up to speed. And they do a lot of work, working with staff on the Hill, talking about what our issues and needs are when we're not there face to face. So just a couple of updates on the Mobility Services Department project implementation. We've been keeping you apprised of that effort. Director Hobson just sort of touched on some of the work that's happening out there. So the new contractor MTM is up and running with us. We're happy to announce that they took over the operations of the travel training program as of May 2nd. And as a result, then, some of the next steps beyond that, I guess the Southside ADA Paratransit Service Interview and Assessment Site, located at 87th and Greenwood in Chicago, is scheduled to open on July 5th. Construction is feverishly underway right now. The travel training staff is transitioning to their new roles as mobility outreach coordinators, and they're actually making the rounds now out across the region, sort of reintroducing themselves and sort of reminding people sort of what their new focus and duties will be. In August, the North Side ADA Paratransit Interview and Assessment Site on Montrose in Chicago, Northwest Side, will also open. The call center that handles customer inquiries about ADA paratransit application process and the actual sort of more detailed travel training program operations will begin within the South Side site in July, and then they'll expand out. The project is to be fully implemented by August 31st, 2016 this year, and it is on track, on schedule, and we're happy with that progress. Some of you may recall, each year we join with many partners across the country to promote the June 16th as annual Dump the Pump Day. So we'll be participating again, joining with APTA and others. Once again, we're going to be encouraging riders to jump on CTA, Metra and PACE instead of driving on Thursday, June 16th. This year, as part of those celebrations, we will include a social media campaign that will include sweepstakes and prizes. Always gets people engaged. Restaurant gift cards, Venture cards, and some other passes to some other Chicago museums that will encourage people to actually use transit to get to will be part of those packages. All riders have to do is actually take a selfie on how they dumped the pump that day, post it, and we'll be automatically randomly selecting winners from those great entries. All they have to use is one of the two hashtags, hashtag dump the pump sweeps or Okay, DTPCHI, I guess that's Dump the Pump Chicago, to get engaged with that. Additionally, we'll have a street team out there at different transit locations that are going to hand out some vouchers and coffee cups, partnering with a couple of other participants to give out free coffee and thank them for dumping the pump and using transit. And we hope you will also consider doing so on that day as well. In addition, many of you may have heard that this week is National Infrastructure Week. This year, the theme is Infrastructure Matters, and we continue to engage with that and with the media. You may have seen the Tribune did the Tribune transportation column on Monday did a great story about transportation infrastructure needs and heavily focused on the transit piece of that. I participated in that discussion. Dor Volcada, I think it's actually today, is also going to be participating in a media call, a national media call, talking about the impacts on the infrastructure needs for investment in the bigger old legacy systems across our country. But the bottom line is we're working with our service boards and our partners across the country to continue to get the word out about the capital needs and the infrastructure system. It's going national because even my sister in Australia wanted to ask me why I didn't think infrastructure was sexy, which I guess was a quote I made in the Tribune. So we're getting notoriety all over the world. But with that, that ends my presentation, and I would be happy to answer any other questions.
Are there any questions? Yes, Director Todd. Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Leanne, as a difference, we got this report this morning. I think this is the first time I can remember that we've had annual reports as to what our legislative lobbyists are doing, and I think that's a great idea, and it's something that I'd like to know what they're doing, and these reports are kind of skimming over things, but at least it's a report. Under the present system in Springfield, the only meeting you have to have is with the Speaker of the House, and meeting with all sorts of legislators and stuff like that doesn't do much good today, and that's just aside to what's going on. But anyway, great, thank you.
No worries. And we will continue to do that. We'll continue to do, like I said, email updates too on a more regular basis. But it is important that we keep the broader base of the legislature informed of what we're doing as well, which is a lot of what we end up doing.
We had one of those meetings with the Speaker of the House a couple of weeks ago, and I do thank the Speaker because he doesn't meet with everybody, but he was engaged and he sat down and we talked. And even it's hard to believe, as the Speaker of the House, doesn't know what the final outcome on things will be, because the governor obviously is a player, as is the rest of the legislature. But the Speaker did give us one of those meetings. Anything else of Leanne? I was down there the last couple of days with Jeremy, and yesterday, Leanne, I met with the TIFIC steering committee at the State Chamber of Commerce, and extensively discussed TIFIC. They're asking for a smaller amount of money for infrastructure than the Metropolitan Planning Council, and I encourage them to think broadly, largely. Don't settle for an amount that's too small, and let the legislature go home and say that takes care of everything, along with the lockbox. And that was one of the things that was discussed at the TIFIC steering committee yesterday, was we want to make sure that they pass a real capital plan and the lockbox, and not just say, well, we gave you the lockbox passed and a smaller plan. We can't have that because the needs are so large. But one of the things, and Leanne, they've requested that we give them, they want my explanation in writing of why the 80-20 split, and I wouldn't say there's nothing in history there's been an 80-20 split, but times have changed, including millennials, the mandates on free and reduced rides, the heavy mandate on Metro and positive train control, demographic shifts, And transit today is more important than ever. And one of the reasons I ask you for those employment numbers is if there's one economic success story in Illinois, it is the central downtown business district, of which Chicago leads America in corporate relocations over the last couple of years. And mass transit, as the mayor said in a Sun-Times piece this week, a major reason that we are able to lure corporate America to create jobs in downtown Chicago. So I made an impassioned pitch that the historic 80-20 split no longer works in the 21st century Illinois, and there are a lot of reasons it doesn't fit. But I did the entire steering committee, Leanne, yesterday at the chamber. Jim Riley was in tow with me from the Metropolitan Planning Council, along with Peter Scozzi, for a number of meetings, including the chairman of the Transportation Appropriations Committee in the House. We met with the Senate Transportation Committee chairman, met with Senator Murphy, who is the Republican budget spokesman in the Senate, as well as Heather Staines, who is the Senate Democrats Appropriation chairwoman. So we made a lot of rounds, and with all of them, Leanne and members, I said, and if anybody starts to ever talk about an 80-20 split, it's old, it's outdated, it is not the way you expend your money for results, of which Governor Rauner wants results for any new money that's out there. And the results are shown that there's a 4-to-1 return from the Brown Line example on mass transit. So it's an old, outdated method. The other thing that Director McGallis always asks, wow, you're a busy guy, where you been? I did go and attend APTA's meeting for board members in Texas a couple of weeks ago, which is always enlightening to see our fellow board members, especially from the other large cities, and to make sure that APTA, of which we are a dues-paying member, doesn't forget the legacy systems. And I know Dorval Carter today has a meeting to say, don't forget the Philadelphia's, New York, Atlanta's, the big cities of the world with respect to transit, but clearly went down there with the direction from Executive Director Redden, that I go down there and flex the muscle of the larger legacy systems that are there within APTA, saying, hey, don't forget us. And it is interesting, including other cities, talking to BART, which is one of the San Francisco systems, about what kinds of raises they're giving their employees. So it's just interesting to watch Washington, D.C.'s Leanne Redden talk to, his counterpart from some of the other major cities. So APTA, if you get the opportunity ever to attend, and Leanne can direct you. She's very active with APTA, as is our staff. You should go and see what it does. And they're critical to us on a national level, especially in the national media, including the Wall Street Journal. But I'm a believer in our membership in APTA. But for me, it was my first APTA meeting since I assumed the chairmanship role here, and it's they're helpful, and I learned a lot.
Actually, one thing that I was remiss in including in my comments, that not this past week but the week before, Chairman Dillard was honoured by the Senate for his years of service. We actually did a blog post about it and put that out there, but I think just in case you weren't aware of that, he was honoured by his colleagues in Springfield.
It was embarrassing, and it's very strange to have your obituary read while you're still standing there. And it was cute. The next day, just a cute story on my 12-year-old daughter, who was there. I sent her a picture of her and I outside the big doors of the chamber, and she got on the bus So I text her, well, I've got her attention for like the 8-minute bus ride to the middle school she attends. And I said, thanks for going to Springfield with me. You know, get used to riding the bus because that's what Dad does. And I said, did you recognize the man that the Senate was talking about? And she said, it depends on what day it is, Dad, if I recognize you or not. And can I have tickets to so-and-so? So she goes, be that man they talked about. But thank you. Speaking of honors, Director Lewis said that he read that I was a commencement speaker at my alma mater, Western Illinois University, but our own Leanne Redden was a commencement speaker at one of the University of Illinois' graduations last weekend, especially the division or part of the U of I that deals with urban planning and things like that. So we're going to go into the commencement speech business here at the RTA, but any chance we get to do something like that and have people realize that there's a career and a need for mass transit, that's a good thing. So thank you all very much. Anything else for the executive director? If not, we'll move on to item 6. Which is our quarterly RTA Citizens Advisory Board update, and I think Greg is here. I see him. And Greg, as much as we always like to have you here, we love your wonderful, awesome companion animal as well.
I think we're going to have to give her a little training here.
Thank you, Greg. It's great to have you again.
Yeah, good morning on this beautiful day, Chairman Diller, directors, public, and RTA staff. When you mention my companion Ruben, it's usually hi Ruben and then maybe hi Greg. So it's pretty typical. Okay, I want to, we had our second combined meeting of the RTA Accessibility, Transit, and Citizens Advisory Committee meeting on April 18th. At the beginning of the meeting, we had a overview from Government Affairs about the positives and negative points within both the federal government and the state government as far as where they stand on transportation. You have all received a report from RTA staff, so you know the positives and negatives already. So anyway, but we once again lent our support any way we can to provide letters, telephone calls, etc. to our legislature to make sure, to encourage them, more, to be on the positive side of public transportation, not the negative side. Secondly, we had a stellar report, overview from Mark Miner about Ride On. He gave us an overview of the marketing campaign. One thing that occurred during the meeting was that people on the committee indicated to him that there should be a stronger marketing effort towards people with disabilities to better encourage them to ride on. So hopefully he takes our advice to heart and does markets the disability community. We also had our annual report from Ann Lefevre about mobility services, and as of December 15th, there were 65,313 individuals eligible for paratransit. This is up 8% from the same time last year. She also informed us that there were 17,672 new applications for paratransit. This is an increase of approximately 5% as of the date of the report. She also informed us that the helpline had received 116,727 phone calls or voicemails in the past year. This was a decrease from the prior year, and she indicated that it probably has to do with even though I said the applications are up, but overall for the prior year, the applications were down, so she figured that's why they had less telephone calls and inquiries at the help desk. The final thing she reported on is that the 59 West Washington location for customer service was closed, and now they are at four city locations throughout the Chicago area. The committee found this very positive because it gave better access to people within their communities, that they're able to go to these four different sites if they need to. After Ms. LaFever's report, Leanne reported out to us that her focus will be the capital funding and shoring up the transportation infrastructure, which you've had a lot of discussion on today, which is very important to make sure that the infrastructure is maintained so that people feel safe and people are comfortable riding the system. One thing that the committee did suggest to her is that while she's talking about funding, is to take a look at a more sustainable strategy for funding paratransit. She said that she would discuss this with the service boards and also with the RTA projects committee. Finally, we had a report about Lake County Dial-A-Ride. Bruce Christensen, who is on the advisory board, presented and told us about the expansion. The Dial-A-Ride in Lake County has been in existence since 2010. This year they expanded it to cover the central part of Lake County. After his presentation, the committee had a long discussion, and probably will continue the discussion about Dial-A-Ride, paratransit, taxi cabs, etc., to see if there's a better strategy in combining and not only dollars, but also finding creative and innovative ways of providing paratransit for people with disabilities and seniors. That ends my report. Any questions?
Great. Any questions of Mr. Pullman? Greg, I have one question, one comment. Generally, Uber and Lyft, are they accessible to people with disabilities, or what do you find there?
There was just recently a lawsuit that was completed out of San Francisco on Uber, because they were not allowing, or at random they would or would not allow service animals within their share rides. And that lawsuit was won, and hopefully they will have a more positive feeling towards service animals and people with disabilities. the other part with Uber and Lyft, many of their transportation vehicles are not accessible to people in wheelchairs. So that does cause some issues with that particular, with wheelchair users. They claim Uber is trying to make a committed effort to change their policies and the way they conduct business. That answer your question?
Yeah, what do taxis do with respect generally to people that are needing wheelchairs?
They have a taxi access. They have vehicles that are wheelchair accessible. The mayor's office for people with disabilities has been very involved in getting, and the Bureau of Licensing have been very involved in increasing the number of taxi cabs that are wheelchair accessible. They have a program called an agency called Open Doors that they have contracted with, that someone who is a wheelchair user can contact their dispatch and they will dispatch a accessible vehicle to that individual.
Great. And just my comment, when I did meet with the steering committee yesterday for the Transportation for Illinois Coalition, it's like bookends, with pleading the case for how many millennials we have. On the other side, with an ever-growing senior population, and part of it's seniors, but also you mentioned the 8% increase in the last year in the number of people eligible for paratransit, trying to tell that group that the need for ADA and paratransit is growing at a pretty large rate, and it's a federal mandate that we cannot cut, in trying to sensitize them to to that pressure on our need for mass transit, which has obviously changed a lot, including the fact that people like me are getting older, and it leads us sometimes to the need for paratransit. But trying to really tell them, we're growing our paratransit and ADA needs greatly, but we can't cut them because fortunately it's a federal mandate. Anything else? Greg, thank you as always.
Thank you.
We really deeply value your input and appreciate your time. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Are you ready, Ruben?
Bye, Ruben.
I thought he was going to bring that podium over to you. Take care, guys. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 7, our consent items as they appear on the board agenda. The first one is 7A, which is the resolution certifying the financial results from the first quarter in 2016. 7B is the ordinance releasing the 2017 business plan call. Any further comments other than we heard in the finance committee? If not, Director McGallis moves that we approve these two. Have a second from somebody on that. Director Christopher Melvin seconds it. Is there leave for the attendance roll call?
Leave.
Seeing no objection, leave will be granted. And I think, Audrey, was that 15 to
50
nothing?
ayes and 1 absent.
Perfect. Thank you. Item 8 is the approval of a contract and procurement item as it appears on the board agenda, and I think it's a piece of good news. So 8A is the ordinance authorizing the purchase of excess liability insurance policies for the RTA loss financing plan and joint self-insurance fund. Leanne?
We would just be available to answer any questions. It's the annual purchase of the insurance for excess liability. Nadine is perhaps more of the expert than I am. I just provide color commentary.
Little less expensive than last year?
Yeah, no, it was, and I think that the time and effort that primarily Nadine and the service boards put into the presentations we actually make to the people in London and by teleconference here and in Bermuda has really paid off in terms of their confidence in the individuals that work in the agencies, but also the ability to manage risk. And as a result, I think they give us a little more attention, and that has translated now into a cost savings and a reduction in premium, which I think is several $100,000 reduction in premium when many premiums are going up. I think is a big credit to Nadine and the service boards and the effort that they put in on this.
Absolutely. That's quite a savings, which is great. Any questions? Yes, Director DeWitt.
I didn't see it. Are these premiums shared between the service boards? Is it spread out between the four of us?
The RTA pays the premiums out of the fund that we keep for this purpose.
Okay. So indirectly, it's spread across the,
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah, in theory. Okay. Director McGallis moves we approve, seconded by Director Melvin. Is there leave for the attendance roll call on this? Leave. Seeing that it is approved 15 to nothing, and
15 ayes, 1 absent.
hard work pays off. Thanks, Rose.
So she just called in for this, but her team's effort is helpful in this as well. I shouldn't. Yes.
Okay, thank you. And so I can hang up?
You sure can.
Yes, you can.
And we expect to save a few $100,000 next year, too. Thanks, Rose.
Okay, I didn't hear that. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, thank you. Okay, I love it. Item 9 is new business. I have one piece of new business, and it was alluded to earlier, and that's the proclamation which is in your packet where next month I get to declare that it's our Dump the Pump Day. So can I have...
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, it's not in the packet.
Oh, okay. It was just kind of in my why don't you read it, if you would, Audrey? How's that? How's it? You've done some...
Hey, why don't you give me a copy?
There you go. And I may not have page 2.
Sure.
I may, somewhere.
What do you mean, page 2?
I'm just looking at how it ends here. Yep, no, it's all there. Perfect.
Okay, this is the 11th Annual National Dump the Pump Day proclamation, which will take place when it does. Okay, whereas
June
June 16th, 2016 marks the 11th Annual National Pump Day as a day that encourages people to ride public transportation to save money, revitalize communities, protect the environment, and improve the quality of life for all Americans. Whereas people who ride public transportation in northeastern Illinois can save up to $11,041 per year based on today's gas prices, the cost of owning a car, and the average unreserved parking rate. Whereas the RTA system ridership has exceeded 600 million for each year since 2006. And whereas millennials have surpassed Generation Xers and baby boomers as the largest share of the labor force, and they demand good mass transit. Whereas more than 60% of those who commute to Chicago's Loop from outside Chicago's downtown use transit. Whereas for every $1 million invested in public transportation, supports and creates more than 50,000 jobs. Whereas U.S. home values performed 42% better on average if they were located near public transportation with high-frequency service. And whereas U.S. public transportation use in the United States reduces our nation's carbon emissions by 37 million metric tons annually. This is equivalent to Washington, D.C., New York City, Atlanta, Denver, and Los Angeles combined stopping using electricity. Therefore, Chairman Kirk Dillard of the Regional Transportation Authority Board of Directors proclaims June 16, 2016 National Dump the Pump Day, and that the Regional Transportation Authority will join with public transportation agencies across the country to participate in the 11th Annual National Dump the Pump Day to encourage transit ridership. Also be it proclaimed that public transportation is an important part of our nation's transportation system and provides citizens with travel options other than driving a car. Phew.
Great, thank you. Just two things that sort of jump out at me. The $11,000 savings is immense if you use our mass transit in the city of Chicago or our metropolitan region. And on our discussion over here earlier on the 37% recovery ratio of the fare box, an $11,000 savings plus this year, thanks to the Congress, our transit benefits, our pre-tax transit benefits are up. So essentially, a third of your year, if you take advantage of that program, is tax-free. And so, just immense savings, let alone just the mental wear and tear for taking mass transit. And that's our whole purpose on doing this. So if there's no objection, that will go out with that media campaign that Leanne talked about, keep Susan Massal extremely busy. But it was effective last year, and I think it's a great thing. So that will go out. Any new business to come before us? I just have one last comment. Of all places, from a summit and activity with the Indianapolis mayor. So we're talking Indianapolis, which is expending a lot of new money, a streetcar system. So it's Indianapolis. And out of the mayor's office and hearings over there was a great line this week where it was said that trying to have millennials stay and work in your city without great mass transit is like trying to sell them a phone without a camera. And if you want to keep half, and it's now half our workforce, our younger generation in the city of Chicago and in the state of Illinois, they demand, and you got to have mass transit. And so that's just a quote you're going to see me use a lot. Indianapolis and the state of Indiana is something that the rhetoric about the state's business climate always contains. People think the grass is greener in Indiana. I submit it's not. But when the mayor's office and the people of Indianapolis are saying you got to invest in mass transit, if we really believe the grass is greener in Indiana, and I don't think it is, but we at least ought to take note. And if Indianapolis recognizes, you doggone well better, like Houston, be investing in mass transit to lure people to work, qualified people to work and live in your city, then the city of Chicago, the transportation capital of America, ought to take note with that. And yes, Director Friga.
I just have a question on the state money that's owed us, $280 million. Is there any relief in sight for that, or do we expect that to continue around the $300 million figure, and we pay $1 million a year in interest and money we borrow to offset some of that cost?
Well, I don't see any short-term relief, but in theory, eventually, Springfield will hopefully have a stable business climate and go back to normal and be out of the months of delay in payment cycle, not only just for us, but for nursing homes and hospitals and all the other vendors. And the state of Illinois cannot continue to have a structural imbalance where it's taken months and months to pay its vendors, and we're just one of them. In many circles, John, and probably rightfully so, they put education and what's owed to the state's universities and for human services even higher than us. And so, John, there's no relief for a while. and the state, hopefully over a period of a couple years, gets a stable, balanced budget where they pay us like you're expected to in the real world within 30 days. So, but my term may be over by the time that happens. I hope not. So I don't see any relief in sight, and it sticks in all of our craws that we have to, expend $1 million to go borrow money. The only good thing is interest rates have been low, but there's a lot of other people, including our local nursing homes, that are in the same boat. So that hopefully that answers your question. I wish I would wave a magic wand and have everyone in Illinois get paid within a 30-day payment cycle. Anything else? If not, thank you all again. And Director Buchanan, take care, my friend. And I will see you all next month at June 23rd. So, move to adjourn by Director Durante, seconded by Director Fuentes, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Good job.